Go. Uh-huh. Yep. Yep. Can you hear me?
I can see you.
Good. I'm warming up.
Nobody else though.
Thank God. I'm hurrying to put my clothes on, my makeup, get my fancy shoes.
Ora. Okay. Good morning, Timothy. And good morning to everybody watching Japanese Politics One-on-One with us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and listening to us in Clubhouse. This is, the series of podcasts that where we talk about the latest events in Japanese politics, what happened there, and most of the things we talk about usually comes here on this podcast first, and then the news catch up with the news emissions catch up with them later. Timothy, good morning, and thank you very much for being online once again this
Thank you,
Sunday.
Maya.
Okay.
So, Maya, today is November 2nd. Did you know that? We survived yet another month.
Yes. Yet another one.
Congratulations.
You did. Congratulations
Yes.
to you. I know.
Yeah. Every
Well,
week is a new challenge. Today I'm reporting from my home office because it's a 3-day weekend and one of my friends got married in Izu. So I was at a wedding ceremony yesterday. It was beautiful. Mount Fuji was there, very crisp, an elegant wedding ceremony. And I came back late last night in order to do the briefing here from my home office. It's a 3-day weekend, Maya. Tomorrow is Culture Day. And so there's a lot going on there. The prime minister is out of the country. She returns today from South Korea. So there's a lot going on politically. There's a lot going on diplomatically, economically. There's just a lot going on. I really appreciate everybody tuning in. We meet here every week on Sunday at the ungodly time of 8:20, no matter what we're doing. And, you know, I guess fortunately I'm here in the home office, so the internet is stable and it should be a clear picture. But I really long to be back on the water. So I might, since tomorrow is a holiday, I might go out on the boat later today. But there's plenty to talk about, and I wanted to let everybody know that Halloween hit Tokyo on Friday. Friday was a rainy day, you might remember, Maya. It was really a maddening rush because of just before a 3-day weekend. The roads were busy, a lot of rain. 20,000 people were in Shibuya near the crossing. Pre-COVID, you might remember that Halloween really took off, and there were groups of people dressed in kind of uniforms or outfits, or the Blues Brothers or something like that. It really took off. We got hit by COVID, and it's slowly beginning to come back. The police have cordoned off major areas of Shibuya and the Scramble because just so many people congregate there. So this year was a little bit down. There is no drinking. There's a no drinking ban. There's a ban on the motor scooters and the e-scooters and that sort of thing. From 5 o'clock in the afternoon until 5 o'clock, no traffic goes through there. If you're here in Tokyo, you might know that, but for a lot of people who are tuning in from abroad, the Scramble on a daily basis handles more people than many cities in the world have people. So it's an enormous kind of place, but also Halloween is just a hot spot. There were probably 40% diminishment of incidents, of fights, of the police getting involved. So it was a little bit more stayed this time. Let me see. Fall is now unmistakably here. The weather is crisp. The foliage, as I was going to the Izu Peninsula, you could see the leaves changing. So fall, I think, has hesitated to jump in, but it's here now. We're in November 2nd, so there are hot buttons that are going on that I'd like to talk to you about. In particular, the Trump Takaichi summit last week. So we had 3 big meetings that occurred. We had ASEAN, we had the Trump state visit, and then we had APEC in South Korea that the prime minister is just coming back from. We've got a couple of things that are going on next week, and then very close, there's a G20 that will be in about 15 days. So that's another big issue. So this prime minister, 12 days in office, she is still being confronted by this avalanche, this onslaught of, of requirements for her. But in addition to that, she has promised to Ishin, in order for them to come together, maybe 10 items that Ishin holds in their heart as this is make it or break it. You promise those within the diet session that we have now before the end of the year. You are going to achieve success. We'll help you, but you need to achieve success there. And since Ishin never took any cabinet seats, they can leave and they can criticize the prime minister at the drop of a hat. So it's a very tenuous. It's not a. It's quite not a coalition, maybe an alliance, but it is very delicate. So I would like to get into those. Probably talk for about 40 minutes, 35 minutes, and then get into the Q&A. Last week, Maya told me I went a little bit into the weeds. I love going into the weeds, but not everybody in the audience is that seeped in what's going on in Japanese politics. And if I was over your head, I apologize. I'll try and stick to the facts this time. And if you want to get into the weeds, we'll wait for the Q&A session, which follows after the briefing. Back to you, Maya.
Okay, thank you, Timothy. Okay, to everybody watching us, so thank you for being with us this morning or with us again later today, this Sunday, or maybe during the week. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. If you haven't subscribed or hit follow yet, please do that and let us know that you have been with us by leaving your thoughts, a comment or a question there. And if you leave a question after we have finished this briefing, we'll address the question during the next briefing, of course, during the week that is coming up. And of course, there is one more thing. Greg, thank you so very much for mentioning Timothy's interview. Well, so I'm sorry that you cannot find it. We have the file and we'll post it on LinkedIn early next week, so that if you haven't been able to find it, of course, you can easily watch it there on LinkedIn at Langley Esquire's account. And in the meantime, again, well, we are looking forward to your questions and comments. Please let us know what you think, because in the Q&A session, we can once again get into the weeds, as Timothy says, and talk about, well, more details about the events here, and also, well, some technical details when it comes to politics. Timothy, it is once again back to you.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Greg. It surprises me that you weren't able, I get teased a lot by my friends and colleagues, and particularly by my enemies on LinkedIn. And that clip went up maybe on Thursday or Wednesday, Maya. And it did generate a little bit of feedback from friends and colleagues. So I appreciate that. But it is, I don't know how Greg would miss that, Maya.
Well, there is Cole shared a link to the clip, and it is in the
Yeah.
there. Yes, but still, I think that it will be better, to post the clip as a standalone post. So yes, so we'll do that next
Good
week.
idea. Thank you very much, and thanks, Greg. I look forward to your pointed commentary after you see it. You'll laugh. Yeah, but 12 minutes on the television broadcast is pretty good. It wasn't just a pretty face.
No, never a pretty face, actually. Okay.
Thank you. Let's get into Miss Takaichi's schedule. She was on a marathon last week, Maya. 3 international meetings, 12 days in. So she became prime minister, and then she was off to Malaysia. She had 2 days in Malaysia. She came back to welcome President Trump, and he was on a formal state visit. So a formal state visit, there are lots of heads of state that visit Japan from time to time. Not every visit is a state visit, even if it's a head of state. Frequently, if you're in Nagata-cho or Kasumigaseki, you'll see flags flying. That doesn't mean it's a formal state visit. The one with President Trump was a formal state visit, 3 days. He met immediately with the emperor, and then there was a big dinner that they had. And then there was a lot of, pomp and circumstance. There was a bit of a parade, not a parade, it was a motorcade going to visit with the emperor. Probably 18 cars in the motorcade, including a couple of these F-150 trucks that the Japanese agreed to import as maybe a concession or as just a gift to the president prior to his visit, just to make things a little bit easier. But those two of those trucks were prominently displayed, as well as a Toyota Tundra in the motorcade. So the messaging was pretty obvious there. But I think by all accounts, the prime minister did exceedingly well, not only in Malaysia and not only with the prime minister, but also in South Korea. South Korea was a really big deal. The president of South Korea met with all of his counterparts, and we have a schedule, and it's almost a machine production of meeting with Xi, meeting with Trump, meeting with Takaichi, meeting with all of these heads of state. And you can see just by the amount of time that was devoted to each one, kind of where they are in the pecking order. But I think particularly with South Korea, the prime minister did particularly well. She was perceived as warm and forward-looking. That was in President Lee's words. So she is agreeing to resume shuttle diplomacy and expand military intelligence sharing, which has been something that's been a little bit elusive for South Korea and Japan, but critically important for the United States, for these countries to become a little bit more gelled together. So they have agreed to that. The shuttle diplomacy will begin immediately. I think the Secretary of Defense will be visiting Japan next week and meeting with the Minister of Defense here in Japan. So even though it's only days away, these kinds of things really begin to take on a speed, and the acceleration, I don't know if it's just because we're reporting on it, but to me, it seems to be very, very high paced. They have a meeting, things happen out of it. You see that frequently with the Trump administration too. He says something on X and it's already kind of halfway through. But this pace of change is really somewhat remarkable, and to my reflection, a little bit new in the dynamics of geopolitics and in national politics as well. So Trump met with Xi on the sidelines in South Korea, and that meeting went for about an hour. The prime minister was kind of on the sidelines. She watched as this meeting went on, and then it was her turn, and she met for about 30 minutes, followed by, let me see, Canada, that was with Xi for 15 minutes or so, mostly just a photo op. But even a meeting like this in South Korea, collectively, when they sit down and they talk about issues, it's about a 2-hour meeting, 1 hour for the photo op, and then lots of sideline meetings. So it's critically important of what they did, what they said, how they were perceived, and sending the signals. But it's just a pattern of getting together, and I think it's a critical point for example, Xi and Trump to get together, because we weren't sure if that was going to happen. And so, the court is out on how well it looks for critical minerals, for rare earths, and that sort of thing. But there was a lot of, I think, tension that was released there, except for the fact that North Korea decided to launch several missiles. Two of them in particular were supersonic. So they've moved up in the technology range, and they wanted to show that off. It's been a long time, maybe 12 months, 14 months, since they've had this pace of missile launching. So they did this just as the prime minister was elected prime minister. She became prime minister 12 days ago. I think they launched these missiles 11 days ago. So just the next day, to make sure that, as she's going to Malaysia, as she's going to speak with Trump, as she's going to be going to South Korea, everybody knows we're still here. And not only that, we don't have the payload yet, but we have the carrying capacity in these supersonic missiles to hit anywhere in the continental United States, a very broad range. Without, when you're at that level of sophistication, it's really hard to be early detected and shot down. So the relationship between North Korea and China, North Korea and Russia on the payload is very worrying. So I think uh, our dear leader in North Korea is kind of sending this signal. Don't forget about me. You might be having your international conferences, but I'm still here and I'm not going away. So the prime minister returns to Tokyo today, as I mentioned earlier. There are cultural day activities, including that with the imperial household. There's, I think, a garden party tomorrow. I didn't get my invitation, Maya. I think it's probably lost in the mail. And then next week is diet questioning on Wednesday and Thursday. The heads of all of the different political parties have an opportunity to quiz the prime minister. This is the first time for her in this administration. So the news will be very hot, and the temperature within the budget hearing room will be very tense as the opposition parties, and also let's see what Ishin has to say about the promises that have been made, the supplemental budget, and things like that. So this next week will be really a busy one. There's no outbound travel for her this week. She's too busy on the domestic stuff, but she hosts a domestic growth panel on the 7th, which is, let me see, Thursday. And she will include with that the Bank of Japan governor, Mr. Ueda, and Ishin's Yoshimura. So that's really putting the pieces into place about economic policy and the yen, which is having a little bit of trouble these days. And as for the cabinet, Foreign Minister Motegi will be in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday and Wednesday for tariff follow-up with the U.S. Treasury. And then the Defense Minister Koizumi will visit Malaysia on maybe Wednesday, one day there to talk about defense talks and Quad. And inbound, there are no heads of state visits this week, but Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong will visit on Thursday for bilateral with Motegi. So he goes to Washington, D.C. for 2 days. Then he comes back and he meets with Penny Wong. They're going to talk about Australia, US, and the UK integration. And let me see, South Korea's trade minister arrives on Thursday for talks with Takaichi, following up on the summit and this initiation of shuttle diplomacy once again. So that's a very busy week in front of us. There's a G20 summit coming up in Johannesburg, South Africa, in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, on November 22nd to 23rd. Ms. Takaichi will attend that, and she will also attend as the G7 host handover. So the Japanese will be the host in the next G7, and so she's promoting her attendance and her leadership there, talking about Indo-Pacific free and open and tariff reforms. And there's likely to be a bilateral with the U.S. at that time on Treasury and the $550 billion pledge that she made. That issue actually came up only very obliquely during the Trump-Takaichi meeting. It wasn't a flashpoint. She had said at one point, I will challenge it if it appears to be unfair. And I guess on reflection, she doesn't see anything where it's unfair at this point in time. So diplomatic speak for let's push it down the road and not talk about it now. Let's have a nice, good kissy face. Let's be friendly with Mr. Trump. And I think she scored very high. She did very well. Polls put her approval rating at about 48%. That's better than the last 3 prime ministers had in their first poll at their particular point in time when they were prime minister in the first 2 weeks. So she's coming on pretty strong, and the fact that she's a woman also bolsters it. But she has a nice, pleasant appearance. She's smiling. She's she's a star in this international arena, and people want to meet her. And she seemed to be very gregarious and very well welcomely met. There's also the East Asia Summit in Laos on November 14th to 15th. So that's 2 weeks away. She will lead the delegation there, emphasizing ASEAN +3 ties. There's a potential Z bilateral on rare earths at that point. And Japan's role in this meeting in 2 weeks is to hopefully bridge the US and China on supply chains. And then following that, very closely after that, there's an APEC ministerial in Lima on the 15th and the 16th of this month. Motegi will go. He'll represent the prime minister. He'll represent the country there. And this is in preparation for the 2026 host year for Japan, focusing on digital economy, green tech, and a pledge by Takaichi for $10 billion US dollars for ASEAN aid and building up ASEAN to be more of a cohesive trading bloc. Let me see. Japan, I think, is playing to be a stabilizer post the Trump and Xi meeting. So there's a lot of tea leaf reading going on here. But I think Japan is searching for, as we saw with Mr. Kishida, playing that kind of middle role and being the diplomatic leader on a lot of different issues. I think he did a pretty good job. He made some success there. There are very few issues that Japan can take a real true leadership position on, but it is seeking those. And when they come up, like for APEC, Japan fills that void and wants to be recognized as a key player in this region and more largely internationally. It doesn't always benefit Japan. For example, Japan participated in the restrictions on Russia because of the Ukraine move, and it is suffering consequences of that are pretty impactful in the northern territories. I'll get into that. But before I do, I'd like to talk about what's going on in this diet session. The diet opened up 13 days ago. Immediately, the prime minister resigned, and then there was a vote for prime minister. Ms. Takaichi became prime minister 12 days ago. So we're only into this. It's a 53-day extraordinary session. It's supposed to end on Wednesday, December 13th, I believe, if that's no, it's the 17th, the Wednesday on the 17th. A very, very brief period of time. And in this extraordinary session, the LDP, Ms. Takaichi, has agreed with Ishin in order for them to vote with them on about 10 different key issues, which include a supplemental budget of 15 trillion yen to go for gas tax relief and a stimulus to help people who are suffering their salaries, and the inflation is not benefiting them. They're kind of following below what the normal salary rate should be, but inflation is continuing to increase and grow at that. So there will be this stimulus budget. The parties will beat up the prime minister on Wednesday and Thursday, and the committee on the supplemental budget and the gas and the stimulus will be on. It'll start this week and it'll go to this time next week, maybe on Wednesday to Wednesday, and then there'll be a vote on it. So in a very brief period of time, we're going to understand how unified is the opposition with regard to these promises that the prime minister has made to Ishin. And if Ishin gets a smell that it's not going to work and the prime minister can't perform, then the cards are kind of scattered, and we don't know how to read that yet. But I'm sure we'll get into that into the Q&A. Ishin's also insisted on a 10% reduction of diet seats. This is huge. And it's not only huge, I mean, to reduce the number of representatives in the parliament insisted by one party, I mean, that's arrogant and very aggressive. But the prime minister agreed to attempt to do that. We will attempt to reduce the number of seats by 10%, and we're going to do it within this hearing, within the 53-day diet session. That is enormous. That is a great hurdle. And the leader of Ishin has said this is a drop dead issue. We insist on this. This must happen during this session. So I'm sure Brill Cream will come out in the Q&A session and wonder what happens if it doesn't happen within this session. And so maybe I can get to that a little bit. There's also a Social Security reform that Ishin insists on, which includes a free high school and the let me see the ceiling for Social Security benefits. So if you make below a certain amount, you don't have to pay taxes, and Ishin wants that ceiling to be raised, and that's going to require a revision of the budget that was passed just this last year. So that's a pretty big deal. And finally, Ishin insists that in a substantial way, the LDP agrees to make Osaka as the second capital in the event of any kind of disaster that might hit Japan, where Japan needs to reallocate resources or reallocate the central parts of government. And that needs to happen within the next, 5 weeks as well. So that's an awful lot. They also want to have a corporation's donation ban, which everybody has been clamoring for. It's one of the issues that Komeito said, LDP, you're not very serious about this. You like putting that money in your pocket. You're not strong enough about it. And Ishin said, we really want to see progress on that, because when it's a little bit loosey-goosey like it is now, the way the law is, you benefit and nobody else does, because you know all the tricks and all the... So hammer down on corporate donations, and that needs to happen. The draft is expected at the middle of this month, and then a vote. So there's a lot that's going to be happening over the next 2 weeks, where you're going to be able to read the tea leaves in a very clear and dramatic way. So we're going to be looking for that. The likelihood of the passage of these is about 70 to 80% for the budget, and maybe 50% for the reforms. For example, the opposition to the filibuster risks that could just put things on a complete hold. But if it's not passed, and the budget failures trigger a minority crisis, I mean, even between Ishin and the LDP, they still don't have 50%. They still can't unilaterally control either house of the Diet. They are missing one more seat in the lower house, 5 seats in the upper house. So they need to do it in a way that brings in maybe some independent votes or some opposition parties, but everybody in the LDP, everybody in Ishin needs to vote according to the party lines, and there can't be any defections there. So it's very, very, very tenuous. The alliance is very tenuous, and it could trigger. We get this question all the time. Could it trigger a snap election? It could trigger a snap election before this year is out. So it's November 2 right now. November, December. Wow, that's not much time. A snap election would mean that either Ishin or the opposition parties, they say, we're through with this. Ms. Takaichi, you're not a good leader. We have all ganged up and voted to have a no confidence motion. We want to have a vote. We want the election. We want the people to tell you where we stand. And then we're back in the square that we were maybe 8 weeks ago, when there was a possibility of having a snap election, and instead of that, the prime minister resigned. So it is possible before the year ends that we could do that, but here's the rule for having a snap election and why it is a little bit unlikely. So the prime minister either dissolves the House or there's a no confidence motion, but an election must occur within 30 days. And most likely, for the lower house, the campaign is 12 days with the vote on the 13th day, which must be on a Sunday. And the Diet is now scheduled to end on Wednesday, the 17th. So they could close down the Diet, go for an election, and have the election on the Sunday after that, but they would have to extend the Diet in order to do that. And then open the Diet once again before the year is out and accept the new members of the Diet. The emperor would come to open the Diet, as he should, open it up, the new members would take their seats, and then they would close down the Diet for New Year's celebrations and the chaos that always hits Japan in the pre-holiday days. I I don't think it's not wise. I think the population would not tolerate something like that. And Ms. Takaichi is all about, cohesion and unity and keeping things calm. If it's triggered, it's only going to be triggered because the opposition sees an opportunity or a scandal emerges. So there was a inkling of a scandal that just emerged this last week involving one of the Ishin members and somebody on his staff running some for-profit organization. I don't know if it's a flash in the pan or if it actually has good legs, but it only broke this last week. So maybe I'll report on that next week, depending on how much volatility it has. So with regard to the yen closed out on Friday at 153.99. That's a little bit higher. It's higher than it was last week. So that means that the yen is increasing to become a little bit weaker. And we're already past the point when it becomes 152. Usually the Bank of Japan and the Ministry of Finance gets a little bit nervous because the revenue that's being generated because of export sales begins to suffer there. And the Japanese economy is pretty much triggered on the yen being at a certain level, maybe tolerable to 152, maybe 153, but it's shooting up to possibly 156 over the next 2 weeks, depending on what goes on. So the economy in the United States is up, and that pushes the investment to go to the dollar rather than to the yen. The yen is typically viewed as a safe harbor, but the United States dollar is now sucking that in. And we did get a bit of a bump last week because of the Trump Takaichi summit, but I think this next week is going to be pretty important to watch the yen. And if it goes to 155, 156, typically the Bank of Japan jumps in and they purchase yen to prop it up in a very big way. It generates a lot of anger and consternation, particularly from the United States and from the Fed. So let's see how that goes. The Bank of Japan is going to have a decision to hold rates next week. They had a meeting on Friday while the Prime Minister was gone. They decided to hold rates where it is right now, but it could have a December hike. The Fed in the United States has already announced that before the end of the year there could be an interest rate hike. So Japan is kind of standing in a very delicate place, and the Bank of Japan's policy divergence still exists with regard to the Federal Reserve. So we just can wait and see. But there is a lot of optimism for Trump and the U.S. dollar as compared to the yen, and the meetings that we're going to have this next week with the heads of all of the parties trying to beat up the Prime Minister, trying to figure out if they have leverage to force maybe a no confidence motion. But everything's going to happen within the next, it's not even 53 days. The whole diet session is 53 days. We're already 12 days into it. So a lot to look forward to. Let me see what else we've got going on here. I've talked about North Korea being very provocative and firing these two hypersonic missiles just the day after the Prime Minister was elected. They flew in a trajectory just to kind of show off their capabilities, but the jets in Okinawa did scramble. Japan was on alert and it filed a protest. But the missiles had a lofted trajectory, and they splashed down in North Korean waters, nowhere close to Japan's exclusive economic zone. But it was a signal of what their capabilities are. So what was said by Pyongyang was, don't forget us. We will never ignore perceived threats. And what that is inferring is there's a U.S. South Korea exercises that are ongoing right now, military drills, and they saw that as a provocation. They wanted to make sure that people understood that they're not going to sit still when that sort of thing happens. So there was a national security office meeting immediately after that, and the F-15 jets were scrambled from Naha, which is quite a bit away from where the missiles were launched. But clearly, this is a destabilizing incident. Pacific Command called it, an illegal violation of various international accords, and it's actually the first North Korea ballistic missile launch in 5 months, and they had maybe 30 missile launches in 2025, but these are the first two for hypersonic missile launches. So it's something of some concern. That's in North Korea. In the South China Sea, the Senkakus have the incursions by the People's Liberation Army and the Navy and the Air Force have been remarkable. There was a brief hiatus, maybe 10 days, because of the typhoon that passed through there, but now they're back after the 10-day pause. They're back with a vengeance. 4 Chinese Coast Guard vessels re-entered Japan's contiguous zone around the Senkakus yesterday, and 2 vessels which were armed with deck guns made a close approach 8 nautical miles from the island. So the Coast Guard, the Japanese Coast Guard, is shadowing these. They have patrol vessels and surveillance aircraft that are watching it. The self-defense forces in Okinawa scrambled in Naha, unrelated to North Korea, but this is just for the Senkakus and the People's Liberation Navy making these incursions. But this is a restart. So previous to that, previous to the 10-day hiatus where the typhoon passed through the region, 335 days consecutively where the Chinese vessels were either broaching the contiguous zone or there were overflights, but it happens multiple times. And I think what we're seeing is China is trying to create a new normal. This is part of a new normal. You need to deal with this because this is what we're going to do. And so it becomes, really worrisome. People are scrambling. They're challenging these overflights, and it's all has to have a method and a reason for it. And you can kind of draw your own conclusions there. But it does make the possibility of ramming and kinetic action and maybe even possibly deaths to occur when you've got that much going on there. And it's not happening in isolation. So you've got North Korea, you've got the Senkakus. There's other things going on as well, but the Senkakus for Japan is a real flashpoint. But now you've got Russia in the Northern Territories. We've reported on this, but the Russian expansion of the exclusionary zone in these 4 islands has been extended and expanded. So not only, let me see, on Thursday of this last week, Russia decided to expand the navigation ban around the Northern Territories now to cover 50,000 square kilometers. And this includes live fire zones. So they're telling people to stay out because we're having exercises here and for your own safety. But this is going to be going on. They've said it's going to be going on until maybe November 7th or 8th, somewhere around there, a very brief window. But it has an impact on the tankers that are going up there. The tankers, the LNG tankers, Japan has a joint venture with Sakhalin 2, an LNG production facility on Sakhalin Island. They've paid for that. Mitsubishi have paid for that, but their tankers now must reroute 200 plus kilometers. That adds 2 or 3 days to their journey and about $500,000 per journey just to evade violating what the Russians have unilaterally stated. So it really throws another wrench into the works. You've got things going on in North Korea, in the south, not quite involving too much Okinawa, but the Senkakus, and you've got stuff going on in the Northern Territories as well. So innocent passage has been banned by the Russians for the time being. Japanese vessels in particular cannot go into the territorial waters. That's the 12 miles offshore, which is recognized universally or internationally. And they said this is retaliation for Japan's Ukraine sanctions. And this is the first kind of Russian kind of jab at Japan since 2022. So it is significant. It does require us to look at it and explore it. So this disrupts fishing. Japan and Russia have fishing arrangements. It's about 5 to 10 billion yen annually for salmon, for crab, for squid fishing, and it also hinders cargo and ferry routes, and it just threatens the whole viability of Sakhalin 2, which is producing maybe 9 or 10% of Japan's LNG consumption. So this is a big deal, and Japan owns. Japan is a minority partner, not over 50%. Russians hold 50%, but they are a significant owner of that investment. So it is really somewhat worrying. So, in summary, I'd like to say that Ms. Takaichi's first week in office, first 2 weeks, foreign interaction was primary. She did very well. Typically, when prime ministers or presidents are in a bit of trouble, they go internationally where they can score points. Ms. Takaichi did that. That was not by design. That was just by timing. But she's delivered tangible wins, and there was an alliance upgrade with President Trump and a steady hand on APEC and the Bank of Japan backing on her promises to South Korea and to the United States. But there's a gray zone pressure with the Senkaku patrols and the Sakhalin excursions, North Korea, and also the diet issues with her promises to Ishin and the tenuous nature of that alliance. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. There are other things that we could get into, but I didn't want to get too far into the weeds, and I wanted to pass this over to Maya so that we can get into the Q&A and satisfy some of your curiosities, hopefully. So back to you, Maya.
Yes, thank you, Timothy. All right. Yes, so we can move now to the Q&A session. And before we do that, again, I would like to encourage you to leave your thoughts or comments or questions on the platform which you have chosen to listen us to. And to listen to us, yes. And then, of course, I will read them out, and Timothy will answer them to our best ability. And of course, if you haven't subscribed yet or hit follow, please do that so that you can help us spread the word about these briefings. Please share them if you feel that your friends, family, or acquaintances or colleagues will benefit from knowing more about what is going on in Japan and in Japanese politics, because politics, even though many people think that it is boring, it does shape public policies, it shapes also business policies, and in general, the environment in which we live and do business. So, okay, Timothy, moving on to the questions. Of course, everybody who has watched us for a while knows that we've got the first 3 questions coming from our regular viewer, Byron Johnston. Let me just get to those questions. Here we go. And start with the very first one. So, what factors might become the breaking point of the LDP-Ishin alliance? Meanwhile, do you expect the Democratic Party for the People and LDP-leaning independents like Mr. Seko Hiroshige to keep the government going even in the event of a breakup between LDP and Ishin?
Yeah, that's a two-part question. Thank you,
It
Brooklyn.
is.
There are a couple of issues that could fracture the Ishin LDP alliance,
Mhm.
and I think everybody understands how difficult these promises are to perform on. 10% reduction. The leadership of Ishin has demanded that it be done. This is a priority. It needs to happen within this diet session, or else. So it's kind of like that. It is extremely difficult to do. So I think if the LDP or the prime minister shows lack of intention or energy to devote to that, yes, that would collapse it. And if there's that lack of commitment, it's not going to be just on one issue, it's going to be on several issues. So I would expect the supplemental budget to go because it's money that comes out of the government. It's distributed. It's kind of it's kind of difficult. We had this discussion last week, I think, also by Byron, about the amount of debt to GDP ratio, and does that allow the Bank of Japan or the Ministry of Finance to dictate? You can't do that. We don't want you to do that. We know your public policy is to do this. You don't have the money for it. We had a little bit of a discussion there. But yes, Japan is going to be spending money for a supplemental budget. It's going to reduce the tax on gas. It's going to be giving money to some of the wholesalers to get food and more inexpensively into the system. But this is just stopgap. This will be until the end of the year for a supplemental budget. And then they get back into business in January. So there are a couple of critical crossroads that if the LDP is not performing, even with the push of Ishin, as it stands right now, they can't railroad it through any of these issues. And you need 65% of a vote in the Diet to do something as dramatic and drastic as reducing the number of seats. Not everybody's going to like that. Komeito is not going to like that. The fringe parties, the parties that have, 8, 10, 15 people, they're not going to like it because they're the ones that are more likely to lose seats when it comes up. It's not a coin toss. They're going to be more at risk than the big parties, the LDP in particular. LDP might lose some seats, but proportionally, they're not going to lose as many as some of the smaller parties, in particular Komeito. So Komeito is angry about this, and so they're looking for friends. And like the question was asked, the Democratic Party for the People and Mr. Seko, what is their role here? Yes, they're going to find friends in adversaries who are suffering from the same risk. So it is really coming to a head towards the middle part of December. So it remains to be seen. I kind of don't think a closure of the House is in the cards, but you never know. It's too early to say. We don't know how fragile this alliance is and how strong it will hold. How much give Ishin will allow the LDP. Okay, you weren't able to do it during this Diet session, but let's do it the next Diet session, okay? Or maybe extract different concessions. So it's a little bit early to tell, but it's a great question and something that we should be following very carefully. You'll know within the next maybe 2 weeks. We'll have a good beat on that.
Okay, thank you for that. The next one. No one really wants another general election for at least 6 months to a year.
Right.
How long do you think this government will survive before calling a general election? Do you think the LDP could increase seats in a general election?
So the best time to hold a general election for the LDP is during the honeymoon period, which is where we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Mr. Ishiba's choice. It wasn't quite his choice. It was actually his Secretary General's choice, who said to him, whispered in his ear, let's do a snap election right now. We're in a honeymoon period. And Ishiba said, wait a minute, I already told people I wouldn't do that. I promised. Now I'm prime minister. I'm prime minister just a day, and you're telling me to do this? I don't think that's a good idea. Do it. This is the best time. You got to do it. So they did, and they lost. But irrespective of what that experience was, yeah, during the first 100 days of the honeymoon period, if you're going to call a snap election to improve and take advantage of that wind that naturally comes with a new leader, it should be now. But like the question, the preamble of the question, I don't think the population is prepared for that. I don't think they would have the tolerance to deal with that. And if it was called, probably the LDP would suffer in spite of the honeymoon period because they're sick of it. They're saying this is all for your own benefit, and you should be focused on taxes. You should be focused on the economy. You should be focused on inflation. And here you guys are dancing around trying to protect your own interests and to establish your own hegemony over Japanese politics. So we don't like it. We're going to kick you out. So it's a very, very big gamble for them to do that. Once again, we're not going to know for another 2 weeks.
No, no, not really. And the next question, again, it's related to a general election. Can you predict if the mercurial Mr. Tamaki of the Democratic Party for the People will be an alliance partner of the LDP or with the Constitutional Democratic Party in the next general election?
No, I can't. If you ask me right now, I think he's looking broadly, and probably his best bet is with the Constitutional Democratic Party. They're the largest opposition party. He could come in with the LDP, but he wants something for that, and he didn't get the Ministry of Finance. He didn't get Prime Minister. They he toyed around. He kind of tried to be the smart guy, and they said, forget it. We don't like you anymore. We can see you're devious. So we're going with Ishin. So that taste, that bitter taste, could remain in the mouth of the LDP. They might refuse it anyway, but they do need somebody else to help them. They don't need all of Democratic Party for the People votes. It's not as big as Ishin. It's 28 people. Ishin has what, 34, 33? But they need 4 or 5. So if they can get some independence, or if they can cudgel some of these disassociated members of maybe the Constitutional Democratic Party or Komeito or whoever to join the LDP, then they're in like Flint. They'll be okay. But yeah, Komeito is in a real pickle. If there's a general election, they're going to lose votes. The LDP, without the Komeito votes, there are probably 60 LDP members without the Komeito votes will lose their seats. So that kind of secret handshake that they had, the LDP is running in a district, and the Komeito doesn't have a candidate for that position for that district. So we will just tell our Komeito people who live in that district to vote for you. Okay. In exchange for that, there's a district over here that's really important to us. You could put a candidate there, but please don't. And tell your LDP members to vote for our guy, and we'll maintain a kind of stability. And so that's what's happened over the 26 years of the LDP and Komeito. The LDP has kind of gone up and down, but Komeito has remained relatively flat in their membership in the Diet, in the upper house, in the lower house. Not a lot of volatility. But I think without this alliance, they are set out to be dried on the clothesline. And I think they know that. So that's why they're talking with Tamaki and the Democratic Party for the People, and also with the Constitutional Democratic Party.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. There are, a few other questions, of course, and I will read them in chronological order again. So the next questions come from Manabe-san. And Manabe-san writes, during or after the diet session, I think that the following 3 options are expected for the future course of the Takaichi's administration. The first one, aim for a long-term administration while maintaining the status quo. The second one, call a general election once sufficient popularity has been secured. And the third one, advance policies through a cabinet reshuffle or replacement. What are your thoughts on the order of priority or the sequence?
Okay, that's a great observation. I think number 1 and number 2 can occur in tandem. Number 3, reshuffle. Yeah, I think that the cabinet to me looks very strong, and it's balanced. It is more to the conservative side, but at least it's unified, and at least there's no Komeito participation holding the LDP back. So you'll see some dramatic change in certain areas, and you might even see the issue of revising the Constitution come up again. I think that's in the cards. That's definitely going to happen, but I think there needs to, first of all, be a little bit of stability and a little bit of scoring some wins for the LDP and Ishin. And then we move into the new year. So this diet session, it's an extraordinary session. The formal session of the diet starts in January, at sometime in January, around the 15th, and it has to go 150 days. That's what the Constitution says. And in that period of time, like right in the beginning part, they need to pass the budget for the following year by April 1st. So all effort and energy is devoted there. But yeah, scoring some points or having an election at that point in time is not a good idea. The formal election for the lower house is this time next year. So I
Mhm.
think the better gamble is like your first suggestion, Manabe-san. Um, Keep your nose clean, produce some significant wins, keep things stable, and survive until the election comes around next year. I think people are the economy is not good, the inflation is not good. Um, there needs to be a little bit of stability. There's been so much volatility, and I think if the prime minister can produce that and increase wages or deflate inflation, maybe make a couple of significant trade deals. We were poised for that when Trump came. I thought there might be some relaxation on something as a big an announcement. A big announcement. There wasn't, but it was just a lot of um, atmospherics. Trump. They looked great together, and you look at the picture of Trump with Ishiba in the previous summit that they had, and Trump with Takaichi, and it's night and day. It looks friendly. It looks warm. It looks like they can work together. These are dramatics. These are atmospherics, but the atmospherics mean a lot.
They do, and I can say that my friends, Japanese friends and relatives, of course, family as well, they were very pleasantly impressed
Yeah,
while watching the interaction between Sanae Takaichi-san and, of course, Trump. So that was something interesting to observe, and I think that yes, we're still in the honeymoon
honeymoon.
period. Yes, the
Yes,
honeymoon period, but well, the good points, are being scored, and I think that they'll continue, to
yeah.
increase the number of good points for the current prime minister, of course. So thank you very much for this. And then from Hiroko-san, we've got another question. How does the scandal over unreported political funds by Mr. Fujita of Ishin no Kai affect the coalition?
So we don't know yet. That's what I was talking about earlier in the briefing. That yeah, I don't want to get too much into the details. Every member of the parliament has diet secretaries. When I was working in the diet, there were only three. There was a policy, there was an administrative, and then there was an office person. And when I came in, I replaced one of the diet staff who had retired and got married and went to Australia. And so that was just it was easy. It was fortuitous for me to slide in. Nowadays, the each member of the diet has maybe five paid secretaries that work exclusively for the diet man, and they're not supposed to be doing anything else. One of the diet secretaries for for this Ishin member, a very significant Ishin member, has been reported by running an operation that is generating revenue potentially to be fed back into the political organization. So we've been talking about the LDP and Seiwakai putting money in and having the Benkyo Kai, and everybody pays a little bit there and then they don't report it. It's kind of an offshoot of that. But this sort of thing happens quite a bit. I mean, money and politics, it is inseparable. We have laws against it. We have various tactics to either report it or to diminish it, but it is inescapable, and it's not a sickness that is just suffered by Japan. It's suffered throughout the world. It is expedient to bring money to get something done on your behalf as a corporation. Corporations have money, they don't have power, they don't have that kind of ability to change regulations or laws, and it is expedient to bring in a significant amount as a teaser, as a yeah, as a bribe to get something done. And it happens with unfortunate frequency. It is kind of a part of how business gets done. So it needs to be conveyed in a different way. It's not through giving people, Mitsukoshi bags full of cash. You know what the Mitsukoshi bag is, right, Maya? Right? When you go shopping at Mitsukoshi, you
Oh,
go shopping all the time, right?
right. Oh, yeah, I do every day.
So they have this big bag. If you go shopping there, you get some shoes or a hat or something like that. that Mitsukoshi bag, when full, holds exactly ichioku-en.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you
Okay.
fill that with ichioku-en and you put a furoshiki over it, and then you go visit the diet. And they don't do that anymore, but that was done in the past. And also bringing cookies, and then you have the envelope under the cookies. And could you please would you please tell the senator I came by to say hello, right? So scandal and Japanese politics go hand in hand. That's why Bunshun is so popular. It comes out every week on a Thursday. It is avidly read by thousands and thousands of people, and it gives you the inside baseball on what's going on with artists, with movie stars, and also with politics. And I think it was Bunshun, although I haven't picked it up. This last story, this kind of blockbuster, Ishin is skimming money, and we should criticize them now. The flavor of the month. So I'll get into that and report more on it next week. But thanks for the notification.
Yeah, thank you for that. But also, I think it's difficult for the LDP to say anything to Ishin because they
Right.
were right. They cannot
Yeah.
point fingers, and even more, more so now that well, Mr. Nishimura, who was the Minister of Economy, right, and he was implicated in the scandal, he has been reinstated as the head of the what's that the election policy commission, was it, of the LDP, right? He's the head now. So he
Yeah.
went through the punishment period, and he's
He's
back.
been cleansed.
He's been cleansed. Yes, he has gone through the ritual of cleansing, right?
So
And
on this point, Maya, so for those people who are budding Japan hands or you're following Japanese politics, it's a good investment of time to remember who these people are, to look at their Wikipedia page, to look at where they came from, what their education is, what their policies are, because they always stick around. There's not this churning of members of parliament. It's hard to get in, and when you get in, you stick there, and then you want your son to replace you, right? So with Nishimura, he is a very powerful politician from Seiwakai, from the Abe faction. And yes, he was criticized for taking a lion's share of the money and being criticized for that. And yes, the punishment was meted out. He suffered for a year. He didn't have a party post or a cabinet post, and that's finished now. But the fact that he comes back and he holds an important LDP party post, that tells you something. So, yeah, the lesson here is even though these guys might be involved in a scandal, typically they're not going away.
no, they're not. And also, while you were commenting on this, Timothy, I also remember that there were a couple of women who several years ago made the news, and they were also touted as, let's say, potential candidates for better positions, higher positions in the LDP and maybe also the CDP and so on, probably future prime minister like Mitsubishi, I believe. But those, I mean, they totally disappeared from the news and nobody talks about them. But once again, just to follow on what you said, at some point they'll probably resurface one and they will be back, right?
Okay, I'd like to say something about that, Maya. So, one of the things is that I think the guys in the diet want to give these women who aspire to a higher position a little bit of taste of the medicine. So we had to eat a lot, and you're just coming up and you're DEI and you're riding on the coattails and you don't have to suffer like we do. So this is what it's really like. And so I think the women get a little bit of a, a bad deal. I don't think they're treated as true colleagues. That's the first point. And the second point is that, yeah, it is difficult for the women to kind of gain that notoriety and that prestige and to be able to have the throw weight to actually rise incrementally when they're competing with Japanese guys who are fighting tooth and nail. So what the prime minister has done, she has not packed her cabinet with women. She said she would, but she hasn't. There are only two other women in the cabinet. But at the sub cabinet level, there are about 8. So give them the experience, give them a position where they can begin to expand and they can kind of exercise some degree of control. But I think it's a layup to something happening. It's just too early. It's too hard. I mean, we live in Japan. We understand how difficult it is for women to just kind of go up from kakaricho to
Yeah.
kaicho to bucho. It's really difficult. And they've got the other things going on. You know, they've got the high heels going on. They've got the children going on. They got a husband, perhaps, and it's just not a even gig for women compared to men. So it's a tough road to hoe.
Right.
As a
And
result of that, Miss Takaichi really deserves a lot of admiration.
yes, I agree with you because most of the women I have talked with here in Japan, they say that they would rather have her go slowly and develop that pool of talent,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
than just rush and eventually, be blamed for miscalculations or misinterpretations and so on and so on. Which also is, as you said, she's really, well, somebody who well has done the admirable thing at the moment. I hope that she continues in this direction, and so things evolve slowly and in the right direction once again. We have a question from Harry Wright. Thank you very much, Harry, for listening and also for the question. He writes, will the government of Japan be able to control the yen application enough without being so competitive with the US and controlling import costs? It's a little bit long, the question, but yes. So,
So there's more going on in the background than the value of the yen as compared to the dollar, as compared to what the Fed is saying and the value and the price. The um, the return on the 10-year bond has increased for the Japanese bond, and that does impact the value of the yen. But I think we are in the middle. We've got BRICS. BRICS wants to demolish the dollar as the currency where oil is purchased. So the price of oil throughout the world is priced in US dollars, and it gives the United States an easy advantage. They don't have to pay for it. It just everything is quantified in the dollar. BRICS is being cobbled together by China's leadership to kind of confront that. And I think this clash here is going to come to a head within the next, certainly within the next couple of years, the next 2 years, but maybe even within the next 6 to 8 months. And that's where cryptocurrency comes in, and the gold standard and the value. It's all going under a complete revision here. The Fed is being challenged. The president. So the Fed is an independent body. It's not a federal organization. It's a private body controlled by banks. The prime minister, the president negotiates with the Fed, but he can't push them around. He can't fire them. He's attempted to fire one of the board leaders. I don't know if the Supreme Court has agreed to that, but I think he is on a warpath to diminish the Fed and replace it with something else, probably the U.S. Treasury rather than the Fed. So there's a lot going on there that could demolish the way that we look at the value of money, the way the currency is exchanged, and that sort of thing. So yeah, the value of the yen as compared to the Fed, and if the value of the yen goes above a certain rate, the Bank of Japan comes in quickly and they purchase the yen, and it causes a lot of irritation to Japan's trading partners. I think that inflection point is approaching. I mean, it's right now, it's at 154. If it goes 156, which it could within the next 8 days, that's an enormous jump, and I think it would force Japan's hand. But yeah, it's really hard to say. I think there are so many things in flux. Not just this isn't purely a Japan issue. It's more of a global issue. It's mostly a U.S. issue. The U.S. wants to stay on top. They want to be able to control. They want the dollar to be the global currency, and they're being challenged, and so they have to take dramatic moves in order to ensure that. And it's not in isolation. There are other things going on with the United States too. What's going on domestically there? What's going on politically? They're still in a shutdown. There's a lot of confusion going on there. But in in an arena of confusion, a lot of dramatic things can come up. Some which actually hit the wall and stick, and some which hit the wall and kind of fall down. But we are in a very traumatic era right now. The next 5 months are going to be really volatile throughout the entire world, I predict.
Right. Okay. Thank you for this. And well, I think that we have gone through the questions and the comments. If somebody leaves a question after we finish this briefing, we'll of course go back to it next time on Sunday at 8:20. We start again. When we don't know, Timothy, we probably you will be reporting from your boat at that time. Who knows?
Definitely.
Definitely. Okay. Great.
It's been two
Okay.
weeks in a row. I'm getting seasick.
You're getting seasick, right? Or boat sick. Yes, indeed. Okay, so thank you very much for this and well for watching this update. And also, again, I would like to encourage you to share these episodes with friends, colleagues, acquaintances, um, of course, family as well, if you think that they will help those people develop a better understanding of what is going on in Japan and also being able to anticipate future events. So we appreciate your being with us, and of course, once again, we appreciate your participating in the Q&A in the second part of this briefing, Timothy.
Yes, if you found any value whatsoever, please hit like or post a comment. If you found zero value in participating in this briefing, don't do anything. Just shut the video off after we've reported, and we will go home and suck our thumb. But please, participate, contribute, kind of encourage us with the knowledge that you appreciate what it is that we're doing, and that we're feeding a need that you have, because that's the whole purpose of this briefing.
Indeed. Okay, thank you very much for this. And also remember that there is a synopsis, which comes out usually a couple of days, into the week. And if you haven't subscribed for it yet, let me know. Of course, I'll add you to the mailing list, and you will start receiving the weekly synopsis. Of course, we also publish policy updates usually once a month, and they are sent out through the newsletter as well. But we are not going to overcrowd your mailing inbox, so there is no need to worry about that there. Okay, Timothy,
Okay. Thank you
that's
very
all
much,
for
Maya. Thanks
today.
for hosting this
Yes,
briefing, and thanks everybody else. Look forward to seeing you next week.
next week. Yes, enjoy the weekend, and if you're in Japan, enjoy tomorrow too, because tomorrow is a public holiday, and most of us do not have to go to work. Yoo-hoo!
Yeah.
Yeah. See you next
Thanks.
time then. Thanks a
See
lot.
you.